The movie opens in New York, where we meet a calm, controlled man named Dalton Russell as he and his crew walk into a midtown bank like they belong there. Dressed as painters, professional, unhurried. It's an ordinary Monday in Manhattan until it isn't. Dalton's team takes the room full of customers and employees hostage and locks the doors. But from the start, this is not the clumsy, grab the cash and run job you expect. Dalton talks like a man who's read every manual on deception and then written his own. He gives polite, almost philosophical orders and immediately sets the tone. This will be more puzzle than panic. Detective Keith Frazier shows up on the scene, a smart, slightly weary cop with a gambling problem and sharp instincts. He becomes our point person outside the bank, try to negotiate with Dalton through a tense cat-and-mouse dialogue. The media converges on the plaza, pressure mounts, and the mayor wants this wrapped up cleanly. Frazier's at once annoyed by the politeness of Dalton and fascinated by the precision of the operation. You can see that he respects a good mind, even if he knows it's used for crime. Playing off Frazier's impatience is Captain Darius and the rest of the NYPD command, who are anxious, louder, and less patient than Frazier. That clash, cool inside versus loud outside, pervades the whole standoff. Inside the bank, Dalton's control is eerie. Hostages are treated with a measure of dignity that feels intentional. He wants to minimize panic, because panic complicates plans. The robbers use disguises, staging, and a baffling level of slow, methodical work on the vault that convinces onlookers and police that they're after cash. On the outside, however, suspicion grows not only because of the meticulousness, but because Dalton keeps asking for time and refuses to play the obvious game. He's not hurried. That unnerves Frazier in a way that makes him dig. Then the plot gets another layer. Arthur Case, the bank's most high-profile client, is indirectly connected. Case is a wealthy, powerful man who hires Madeline White, a high-end fixer with a silver tongue and a moral gray zone, to protect him and his assets. Madeline is not a criminal in the straightforward sense. She's a specialist in managing reputations and keeping secrets buried. Case's secret is hinted at from early on. He's got something in a safety deposit box that someone else doesn't want the world to see. He's cagey, prickly, and you can feel that his history may be rich with ghosts. Madeline negotiates with the police and with Dalton on Case's behalf, but she's not exactly on the moral high ground. She does what needs doing to keep ugly truths from turning up in the press. That sets up a classic Spike Lee dynamic. The law has its limits, the wealthy have their networks, and truth can be a commodity. When Madeline meets Frazier, it's polite hostility. A negotiation between two professionals who understand that secrets and leverage are currency. Back inside the bank, Dalton orchestrates a series of smaller, theatrical tricks. He makes people change clothes, he organizes lines, he keeps the hostages calm, and crucially, he separates certain people, the bank manager, the security officer, for reasons that hint at a very specific target. The crew is disciplined and utterly inscrutable about its endgame. There are quiet moments of menace. A hostage getting sick, a child terrified and then soothed, a negotiator's sense that he's seeing an artist at work, and small, dark jokes that show Dalton's intelligence, but not his empathy. He's not a monster. He's a technician who plans every contingency. As the day unfolds, outside pressure builds in phases. There are tactical teams ready to storm, there are news vans, and there's that one human element that leans the scales. Frazier's own career is on the line, and he wants a clean resolution. He pushes and prods, trying to figure out Dalton's leverage. Meanwhile, Madeline is quietly buying time for the bank and for Case, keeping conversations off the record and minds calm. Her presence raises the stakes. What's inside a single safety deposit box that makes a multi-millionaire hire a fixer with more clout than ethics? The suspicion that this heist might be about something other than cash ticks up. The middle of the movie is wonderfully tense because it's mainly composed of people talking and reading one another, and because Dalton seems always 2 steps ahead. He puzzles the police, and he teases Frazier with philosophical barbs. Frazier, who normally deals with thugs and routine crimes, has to move into a chess game with deep, strategic thinking. The audience gets tugged along. We used to heist where the score is money and the getaway route is physical, but here the prize is a secret, and that changes everything. It also gives the film room to interrogate the ethics of who gets punished and who can buy their way out. We learn more about Arthur Case's past by degrees. There's a hint that his wealth came from collaboration with very bad people during a particularly ugly chapter of history. Madeline knows the whiff of it and is pragmatic about the smell. She can clean things up, but her bargaining chips always have a price. Fraser's moral code is different. He wants justice, not just cover-ups. That clash of motives, preservation versus exposure, is the moral engine of the film. It turns the bank into a crucible where personal histories and national sins briefly collide. Dalton's crew finally achieves their main objective, and when they start making moves that don't match a conventional cash grab, the tension explodes into a fever of suspicion and conspiracy. There are subtle reveals. The selection of certain boxes, the odd behaviors of staff, the cargo that appears to have value beyond currency. At the same time, the robbers stage red herrings, ensuring that even the smartest detectives chase the wrong leads. The film doesn't spoon-feed the audience. It rewards attention, and it keeps the true aim just out of reach until the late act. The negotiation sequences get more barbed. Fraser has to juggle the media, the mayor's office, and the moral complexity that Madeline and Dalton represent. Madeline plays a longer game than the police. She's interested in reputations and the possibility of burying evidence, while Fraser is interested in law and outcome. Dalton plays them both like instruments. There's a memorable scene where he confidently explains his motives, not with bravado, but with the detached calm of someone who has rehearsed every line. It's a little unnerving and oddly charismatic, and it's where Clive Owen's cool, measured performance really pays off. When the day finally ends and the bank is cleared, the audience is expecting either a bloody reveal or a big, noisy takedown. Instead, the aftermath is quiet and unsettling. The robbers are gone. The vault appears untouched in the conventional sense, but we begin to understand that the real transaction was never about cash. The police sweep for bodies. They interrogate staff. They check the security footage and find baffling edits and tricks. It's clear that Dalton engineered exits and entrances in ways that made it physically possible for him and his crew to vanish. He had built uncertainties into the building itself. A small, brilliant architectural deception, and exploited human assumptions about how a bank works. It's one of those heist moments that rewards cleverness rather than brute force. Fraser walks through the aftermath with a mixture of frustration and admiration. There's a sting to it. Law enforcement is often reactive rather than creative, and Dalton's scheme underlines how creative thinking can outflank force. The wealthy bank client, Arthur Case, is suddenly more than a background figure. The police find evidence that ties his past to atrocities, something Madeline has been desperately trying to keep from public view. Suddenly, the heist looks less like an economic crime and more like a moral reckoning. The movie asks questions without beating you over the head. Who deserves protection? Who deserves exposure? And what does justice look like when history is ugly? Madeline's role deepens after the robbery. She's both repulsed and fascinated by Dalton's audacity. And in private meetings, she maneuvers to mitigate fallout for her client, while also gauging Dalton's ideological limits. She's pragmatic, but not immune to conscience. Fraser digs into the evidence and starts to connect dots. The heist targeted not just money, but the thing inside a particular safety deposit box. And that box is connected to Case. The moral weight of that discovery forces him to make a choice. Pursue the purely legal angle, or try to use what he's learned to seek a larger justice. The movie's tension ultimately pivots on that choice. The resolution is not an action set piece, but a series of small, morally complicated decisions. Dalton never fully reveals his personal backstory on screen, but his actions suggest he's motivated by more than a paycheck. He seems focused on rebalancing a ledger that history forgot to settle. The film slows down to examine the human cost. Bank employees are shaken. A little girl who watched it all is forever changed, and Fraser goes home with a nagging sense that the world isn't neat and neither is justice. Those emotional beats are what linger after the technical brilliance of the heist fades from memory. In the final sequences, Dalton disappears into the city as the police spin their wheels. There's a neat, almost elegant finish to his vanishing act, carried out with the same calm and intelligence he showed inside the bank. He closes the loop on his plan without pyrotechnics. It's about timing and misdirection, not brute confrontation. The viewer gets the satisfaction of watching a plan executed flawlessly, but the movie doesn't let you celebrate too long because the true payoff is the secret that emerges. The contents of that safety deposit box implicate Arthur Case in profoundly shameful deeds. That knowledge reframes a lot of what we've seen. The crime wasn't random. It was an instrument of truth. Fraser is left to reckon with all of it. He needs to weigh the letter of the law against what seems morally right. He's not naive about how this could play politically and legally. He understands that exposing case publicly could destroy lives, but also that burying it preserves an injustice. The film gives him no clean, heroic exit. Instead, he ends in a state of resigned clarity. Sometimes justice is messy, and sometimes the right thing isn't the one that fits neatly into a report. Madeline, for her part, walks away with her own kind of damaged pragmatism. She's a fixer who understands that some stains never fully wash out. She negotiates survival rather than redemption. Dalton's vanishing is a kind of victory and a provocation. He proved a point about power and secrecy, but he also left wounds. The final images of the film are quieter than you expect. They're about consequences rather than applause. That moral ambiguity is the whole point. Spike Lee and his cast don't let you off easy. The heist entertains, sure, but it also forces you to look at who benefits from silence. There are touches of humor along the way. The wry barbs between Fraser and his team, the odd little exchanges among hostages trying to normalize an abnormal day, that keep the movie human and not just an exercise in tension. The acting strikes a good balance. Clive Owen's Dalton is coldly charming. Denzel Washington's Fraser is likably fallible, and Jodie Foster's Madeline is quietly fierce. Christopher Plummer's Arthur Case is the ominous background presence whose past makes the heist morally complicated. If you love the mechanics of Robbery, the movie delivers cleverness. If you like character games and moral puzzles, Inside Man gives you the chance to watch professionals at work. Negotiators, fixers, robbers, each operating under their own code. The payoff is satisfying because the movie trusts you to connect the dots and to sit with the consequences rather than offering pat justice or a triumphant, obvious villain takedown. It's elegant, morally ambiguous, and a little smug in its intelligence, but in a good way. Walking out of the film, you're left with two competing feelings: appreciation for a finely tuned heist and a gnawing discomfort about how the rich and powerful can shape outcomes behind closed doors. The thieves get away, yes, but not in a way that feels celebratory. It feels like the end of a carefully staged lesson. And for Detective Fraser, the job continues. Better at his job for having seen brilliance, and worse off for having seen how messy truth can be when it collides with privilege. That's the lingering note. The film entertains your love of a clever plan while quietly asking whether the ends were worth the ethical costs, and it does so with style, wit, and a tasteful dose of moral unease.
Watch me go, go. Fast lane, I don't move slow. Bad taste, bad name, but you know, no. Fast lane, I don't lose control. Red beam on the dashboard. Nice swim with the top down. You chase every rumor, I chase what I got now. Still tongue, no sweet talk, just facts when I step in. Got scars on my left wrist, proof that I never kept in. They pray for a slip up, I pray for a clear run. Pockets make a sad sound, still I turn that into more funds. One call and it's over, no time for the fake love. If you came with a small talk, you came to the wrong club. Count up, then I cut through. One breath, then I come through. Hands up when I slide in, eyes wide when I run through. Fast lane, watch me go, go. Fast lane, I don't move slow. Bad taste, bad name, but you know, no. Fast lane, I don't lose control. Hold up, feel the shake in the floor now. Still mine when I back up, still fine when I pull out. No fear in my face, no, just ice in the mindset. One blink and I'm gone, gone. Try me, that's a hard lesson. Fast lane, watch me go.